Coming up on show 498, deep discounts if you want to buy a hydrogen car, faster charging for the Model 3 in Europe, and a big tie-up between two major charging networks. Those stories and many, many more coming up on the programme today. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily, your regular show for Wednesday, the 12th of June today, 2019. There is another bonus show floating around, by the way, because very late last night, very late last night here in the UK, because of the time difference, was Tesla's shareholder meeting 2019. So I've been through the whole presentation, a couple of hours of YouTube video, maybe take off some of the stuff you don't need to know. It's about an hour and a half. I've condensed it into 20 minutes for you and put that out as a bonus podcast today. So look in your feed, look on YouTube, and you should be able to find it. As always, thank you to myev.com for helping to make this podcast. I really couldn't do it without them. And if you'd like to find out more, if you're in the US about this whole new way of buying and selling EVs, it's a way of connecting buyers and sellers, and along the way learning about them as well. Just check out myev.com. I've got a mega Patreon update to do because I haven't mentioned this since last Thursday. Last Thursday we heard from new producer Christian Marler, and the exec producer, I realised I called him PONTUS KINDBLAD, but it could be KINDBLAD. Anyway, he hasn't messaged me to say I got his name wrong. So that's where we left it. Next up, a new executive producer, Perry Simpkins, joined just after those two, and it's been 3 or 4 days, and I've not said thank you to Perry Simpkins. Then Jonathan Price UK signed up as a producer, so thank you, Jonathan. Another producer, Greg Bailey, joined up shortly after. Well, over the weekend, and I was at Fully Charged Live, so I was all over the place and kind of distracted, and my emails were stacking up in my Patreon folder. Then thank you so much to Michael KUFFIN. Michael, it was great to meet you. I really appreciate your support. And new producers, GILL, NOWELL, and Mark Sanders, two people as well who haven't been on the podcast yet, but both of them will be. We have big plans. And if that wasn't enough, Paul Ridings decided to move up to exec producer status, and 3 new producers joined up yesterday. Michael Young, Stephen Brooke, Mike in Oklahoma. Thank you to all of you. And it's an honour. It's an honour to have people support this show through the Patreon platform. Thank you so much. Well, if you didn't hear me talk about it recently on the show, if you're new to us, you might not know I'm a Renault Zoe owner, and I'm looking forward to the brand new one. The current one is a 40 kilowatt hour battery, new Renault Zoe coming with an even bigger battery that'll definitely put it in the same conversation as the Corsa E and the Peugeot E208. The reason I'm really excited for the Renault Zoe, whatever you want to call it, ZE50, the Neo, I've seen it called online, whatever the heck we're calling it, the embargo gets lifted Monday. Now, I haven't been told anything personally about this, but, I can join the dots online to work out it's going to have a 50 kilowatt hour battery and a CCS plug as well. Now, of course, the Zoe is famous for being unique in that it only charges on AC, up to 43 kilowatts for some of the cars, but only AC charging. Therefore, in France, domestic car, loads of these 22 kilowatt charging posts all around. So, if you want to sell Zoes in France, you can't not charge at 22 kilowatts on the AC. And so I think the really unique thing about the new Zoe / Neo, whatever we call it, is it's going to maintain that 22 kilowatt AC charging, but also have 50 kilowatt plus, maybe even 75 kilowatts, who knows, maybe at a future time, CCS combo plug, so CCS charging on DC. Wowzers. That is the ultimate, right? That's perfect. If only all EVs would be that flexible. Now, one of the Dutch journalists who got invited to Paris earlier this week to see the unveil of the new Renault Zoe, appears not to have taken that NDA, that non-disclosure agreement, NDA, very seriously, because they took some pictures and they put them online on a forum. So they're all floating around on the internet today. That's awkward. Having a look at it, though, looks great. And if this is the real deal, the styling is very much like the Renault Zoe at the moment in Europe. Again, if you're listening in the US, not a big car. You might not even be familiar with it, but here, very popular little city car in Europe, and it looks like the outgoing model. They haven't made it look like a Clio with batteries, and I like that. I like the distinct styling. I'm so pleased they didn't bland it out. They've kept The styling, good to see LED lights on it, the front parking sensors, which has always been a little bit missing on the one that I own. So really hope this is the real deal. We'll find out Monday when, of course, the people who were invited along like fully charged can unveil all the details. Staying in Europe, and a really interesting situation emerged over the weekend. Starting last weekend, a firmware update started to roll out to Model 3 owners with the long-range battery. Now, if you're a European Model 3 long-range battery owner, you could well have this firmware update now, which allows your car to charge at up to 200 kilowatts. On the European chargers, the third-party networks, that is 850 miles an hour of range. Jeepers. I mean, that is literally turn up at the services, plug in, run to the toilets, do what you got to do, get a coffee on the way back, try not to break stride, get back to the car as quick as possible. And it's still going to be full. Okay, so my tongue is slightly in my cheek. But you know what I mean? That's fast charging. Fastest charging cars in the world are going to be the Tesla Model 3 long-range cars in Europe. That's not bad, is it? The fastest charging cars in the world are the European Model 3 long-range cars. Now, in the US, they are just starting to roll out Supercharger V3, so that'll change. However, charging on a European ultra-fast charging network, if you think about Ionity, Fastned, Allego, for now, that's awesome. A little quote from Tesla here. They say, and I quote, "As we work towards the introduction of V3 supercharging in Europe, we're releasing an early software update to European Model 3 long-range customers that will allow them to charge at hundreds of third-party fast charging stations, up to 200 kilowatts. When our own V3 supercharger technology is introduced, these cars will be able to charge even faster at 250 kilowatt peak charge rates." Tesla vehicles benefit from the most extensive charging network in the world by having access to Tesla chargers like our supercharger network, as well as the publicly available EV charging networks, end quote. Of course, here in the UK and here in Europe, the Model 3s come with the CCS plug, not the proprietary Tesla plug that you get in the US. But what about being able to access at least some of those benefits? What's the latest with, weren't they making an adapter for the US, or am I thinking of the CHAdeMO? No, because the CHAdeMO adapter's been out for ages. So yeah, I'm thinking of the US. I read it on Electrek ages ago. The US are getting an adapter. But what's the... Okay, I was just thinking off the top of my head. I shouldn't sometimes busk it because I make myself look stupid. When I stop recording this podcast, I'll go and look at that immediately and then maybe update you tomorrow on the podcast of the current status in the US of that adapter, because, man, it would be good to be able to use things like Electrify America. Here, we'll come on to them in a moment. Let's finally talk about Tesla's next-gen Roadster prototype. Had an outing this week, and it gave us a rare look at the hypercar's special steering wheel in action. When Tesla unveiled the next-gen Roadster in 2017, it had a butterfly steering wheel. I'm thinking of a kind of, Knight Rider steering wheel. However, butterfly steering wheels are not street legal in most markets. An engineer at the launch event said the automaker aims to release it in the production version, though according to Fred at Electrek, it offers little grip space for the first time. And we saw someone did two, it looked like, I've watched this video a couple of times online. One of the people that was at the Tesla shareholder day took video of a Tesla employee driving away in the new Roadster, which was on display. And it looked like they had to do two complete rotations of the butterfly steering wheel to actually turn the wheels not that much. It certainly wasn't on full lock. Of course, that could just have something to do with the electric power steering, the power steering rack, the ratio they've got. It might not be the steering wheel. I'll just add that. I'll pop a link to Electrek in the show notes. This next story is huge for making charging seamless. If you're an EV driver, you probably got some apps and some cards for multiple charging networks, part of life of owning an EV. One of those accounts may well be with Chargepoint, and if you've just registered with Electrify America as well, soon you'll only need one for both networks. They've announced an agreement, which means they're joining together, not business-wise, just an interoperability agreement. It means In simple terms, if you're a member of one, you can charge at the other, says Autoblog. The partnership goes into effect soon, later this year actually, and it's going to combine access to 30,000 level 42. Level 42, jeepers. You can tell I've had a long day. Level 42, by the way, are an Isle of Wight-based band here in the UK that had big hits in the 80s like Lessons in Love and Something About You. What I mean to say is it gives access to 30,000 level 2 chargers. First time I've made that mistake. Mark King, who is the bassist of Level 42, is an incredible bass player. If you have some free time on YouTube, search Mark King bass solo and watch some of the videos of him playing his bass guitar from the band Level 42. This podcast has taken somewhat of a digression. Let's get back to the news. Whilst it may not be super important for current EV owners using both networks individually, it does simplify things, and hopefully it's a sign of a way forward where we have a very easy way of charging. I'm going to put a link to Autoblog in the show notes, and we stay with that publication for news about this next story. Lots of news outlets had this story, by the way, but I just happened to pick Autoblog's interpretation of it. They say that a hydrogen station in Norway experienced an explosion on Monday, and the company that runs the hydrogen station has now shut down 10 other hydrogen stations. According to several local sources, the station was in a suburb of the capital of Oslo. One of my podcast listeners even contacted me about this, by the way. As of now, Nel Hydrogen, they are the company that supplied the equipment, doesn't have an official explanation for the cause of the explosion, says Autoblog. Well, 2 people were taken to hospital after the force of the blast didn't actually hit them with anything from the hydrogen station blast, but the blast was so powerful it set off the airbags in the cars they were driving past. In response to the incident, Toyota and Hyundai have now halted sales completely of hydrogen-powered cars in Norway. The stations that Nel Hydrogen shut down are located across Norway and other countries in Europe. And in a related story about this as well, last week, Toyota had said that they were starting to offer discounts on their fuel cell cars. You can currently purchase a Toyota Mirai for $60,000, less than $60,000 US dollars, and a base model Hyundai Nexo for less than 60 as well. What you can trade that car in for, I don't know, because chances are you'll probably be leasing the darn things. At the last time Green Car Reports filled up with hydrogen, by the way, at a station, they spent $75 in the Mirai and $110 filling up the Nexo to get 380 miles. $110 to go 380 miles. Well, the new Model S does that. And you can do it for a lot less than $110. Highly subsidized leases factor into the fact that if you want to buy or lease one of these cars, you'll pay between $350 and $400 a month for the Mirai and Nexo, respectively. And the Honda Clarity fuel cell car is out there as well. They sell in enormously small numbers, but there are people online who will insist, they will tell you that the only way to go forward is indeed with hydrogen. And in fact, many people I think in China, they are starting to kind of ideologically, if you like, shift to hydrogen. Certainly in Japan. Japan are really encouraging their domestic car makers to go the hydrogen route because the government are ideologically wedded to the idea. Because it's hard to own batteries, but hydrogen is so complicated that actually it gives you, if you can own the production and distribution, and you have filling stations that you can go to and all those things, you get so much more control because it mirrors the current system of gas and diesel. So many people don't like EVs because you put some solar panels on your roof, you fill up at home, you get in the car in the morning, the car is full. And who filled it? You did. Who made the electricity? You did. And a lot of very powerful people really, really hate you doing that. And so they'll do all they can to stop it. And they'll throw a lot of money at it, make the cars cheap to lease, and they will really encourage car makers to go down that route. So there's plenty of car makers that are spending a lot of money on hydrogen because they are being strongly encouraged, I'll put it that way, to do so. And it's one of those, one of those things that there's always a fight online between EV owners and hydrogen owners, and it shouldn't be a fight, but it inevitably ends, in sort of, my car's better than your car kind of discussions. I'm quite happily not driving around in something that could explode and blow up and blow up. I can't find the tweet that I did a couple of days ago from one of my listeners. Oh no, it was Sven. I think his name is Sven. It's fine. Svein. Sven Medhus said there was an explosion at a hydrogen filling station outside Oslo on the E18 motorway nearby me. It closed the road for 3 hours. And he heard the explosion. He's 20 miles away and he heard the explosion. So thank you very much for your updates. Okay, moving on. Tesla has soared past 40,000 registrations in Norway, and the Model 3 leads the charge according to Teslarati. The Model S now makes up about 50% with nearly 20,000 registrations. Model X is at 30% with 12,000 registrations, and the Model 3 is about 20%, nearly 8,000 reservations, but it's catching up quickly. Model 3 sales have consistently represented the majority of Tesla's month-to-month sales in Norway since the all-electric sedan arrived in end of Feb, wasn't it? Beginning of March? Well, moving on to a couple of stories, 3 stories left, but 2 serious ones and one jokey one. 2 stories about legislation. The United Kingdom has become the first major economy to legislate long-term climate targets this week. The outgoing Prime Minister, Theresa May, has just hours in the job, announced new legislation today which will enshrine into law a net zero emissions target by 2050, says Clean Technica. Even as she is effectively being pushed out of the door of number 10 with her overnight bag on her back, Theresa May is looking to leave at least some sort of good legacy behind her, other than the catastrophic handling of Brexit, which isn't going enormously well. Announced on Wednesday, Theresa May said she would introduce a statutory instrument in Parliament to amend the Climate Change Act of 2008 to enter into law a commitment to eradicate this country's contribution to climate change entirely by 2050. According to the UK government, it's the first among the G7 nations, and they expect other big economies to follow. And that moves on to France. A Reuters report today says that the French government's new law on mobility is going to uphold a previously announced ban on all fossil-powered cars by 2040. The Transport Minister is Elisabeth Borne, and she said that today. The former Environment Minister is Nicolas Hulot. And this was a couple of years ago at the beginning of the presidency of Emmanuel Macron, and France aimed to end the sales of gas and diesel vehicles by 2040, but there was a little bit of confusion whether a change of regime would mean it still happens, but a new mobility law says it will by 2040, and that law will facilitate the rollout of charging stations, notably giving people that live in apartment buildings the right to ask for installation of EV plugs wherever their car gets parked. Brilliant. And the final story today, it's one to put a smile on your face. Some electric car stories can really lighten the mood of the offices of Inside EVs, and this one raised a smile at the Inside EVs writer's room. Some humour, if you like, from a right-hand drive market. We think this was Australia, and Inside EVs have put a video online today of 2 people getting out of an internal combustion car, a VW, which is parked in a charging bay, which is not a good start, a bad idea to begin with. And as they get out of the car, one of the ladies takes the little caps off of the wheels for the valves on the tyres. Then they walk up to a DC fast charger. They pick up the CCS cable and try and inflate their tyres with it, quickly realising this is the wrong connector. They put it back and they try again, this time with the CHAdeMO connector. Soon working out, hang on, neither of these things are how we inflate our tyres. No, you can't charge a tyre. I'll pop a link to that video in the show notes. Moving on to our question of the week this week, which I have quickly made into a question of a fortnight. I was going to read out the results to it yesterday. I was going to read out the results to it today. I'm already at 20 minutes. I'm so sorry. Let's make this a 2-weeker. The very first 2-weeker on question of the week. Question of the fortnight. Thanks to myev.com for setting this. Should EVs still qualify for special treatment and incentives? What do you think? Yes or no, now they become more popular. We will read out all of the answers this Sunday, I swear. Email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, or leave a comment on the comment section of Facebook and YouTube. Well, thank you very much to 220 patrons of the podcast who keep me going. Your generosity is so kind. It's just amazing. Thank you so much. It blows my socks off. Thank you. Patreon.com/evnewsdaily if you want to find out more. Our premier partners of the show, Phil Roberts from Electric Future and Brad Crosby as well, and a third to add to that soon, by the way. And our partners, David Allen, OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz, Paul O'Connor, and the gang at tryev.com, who will be taking part in a future Saturday special interview to find out what tryev.com is all about. Well, there are 497 previous shows online for free, mostly news, a few interviews, even a bit of Elon Musk shareholder best of, if you want to get the one from earlier today. If you want to get new shows, hit subscribe in your podcast app to get them first and free, and jolly well automatically. And if you want to hang out on the socials, search EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you soon, and remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.